to live stream. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about this. I've sort of thought about it a little bit today on top of other things. I've realised with a lot of the rules coming in play in South Australia, Australia in general, we're running out of time to get this project done and at least drive it for a year. And the problem with that is there's still a lot of work to get done to it. We don't have any resources to realistically make this happen. So, to make this work, there's going to have to be an aggressive approach to maybe get this thing running again. It's got this thing and it's dirty. So realistically, to get this thing on the road and get it running, it's going to cost us maybe $70,000, and it's going to be one of the earliest projects we're going to have to do in order to get this thing on the road legally, make it runnable and whatnot. So to make that happen, there has to be a solution in place to finance that thing's restoration. So I've got a little bit of a few game plans going for me. And by game plans, I don't necessarily mean just making games. It's going to be sort of a side thing. I've got a few other ideas, but that's something I'm going to save until the very end of the video. Until then, we've been working on Dad's car. And a problem I've encountered with Dad's car is a very painful part to try and source, because ours was kind of broken. So I'll point out where it goes. It sort of goes in this hole here, that hole here. And there's another one maybe over here, because it's got 4 of these holes. It's meant to have a 4th one somewhere. I have no idea where it bolts to, but they keep giving us one that's super duper small and it'll never cross those gaps. It's like the size of this unit here, this section here on the motor, whereas this thing, the part is like from over here to over here. It's ridiculously huge, and it was like a fan plate mount or something for this to go on to. So that's our old clutch. This is our new clutch, and this fan is literally good because it doesn't actually have any free float like it had on this one. This one, you won't be able to see it, but essentially when the fan was on there, it would spin a little bit too much and it was a concern. Now it doesn't spin freely at all. So I'm going to sneeze. I apologize. So we're running out of time because by 2030 there'll probably be no way that car is ever going to get on the road again. And if it did ever drive, it would be like a paddock basher or something, because of the classic car tax that's potentially going to come in, stop these cars getting on the road. These cars are also running out of time because essentially all the rules are changing that these things are going to go off the road. And I understand how a lot of people around the globe really want to see a cleaner environment, and to account for that, a project I've got for that one that I'm planning on is the fact that I want to keep it all original as possible, but I came up with a conclusion on what I need to do to make it a bit more green at the same time. It's not going to be visual, it's not going to change it very much, but the idea is that thing there has one part that really needs to be replaced with something to make it green. It will not be noticeable unless you're actually driving it to ridiculous speeds in which you will notice it. That part is a main part of the drive line. It does not change the way the engine is generating power. It does not change the way, well, it does change the way power is applied to the road, I guess. It is essentially upgrading the transmission, because that is a free speed T-bar shift. The T-bar will stay the same, so it will still have this 1-2 drive sort of thing, but it'll be a little bit stranger, I guess. There isn't any car, I think it's actually free speed. It's like 1-2-3 D. I don't believe there is any cars with a transmission in which you can just take the transmission out and throw it in there that it will just fit. I'm looking into the, whoa, don't slip on this slippery surface. I'm looking into the idea of replacing the free speed transmission, which doesn't have an overdrive, with something with maybe 6 or more gears. That way we can keep the engine revs low, and then we can just cruise it around not using as much fuel as if we had free speeds, because this thing would be doing country driving every now and then, and it's not on gas, it's a petrol vehicle. And when I read the specs that someone delivered from one of those, it was 15.5 liters for every 100 kilometers. This car here is a liter less. It is about the same fuel consumption, but it's a 4-speed, so it's about a 15 liters opposed to 15.5 liters. 15 liters per 100 kilometers. That is how much this thing would use. But this one's got lots and lots of problems with it, which makes it probably use more fuel because it's running a bit rich. We're going to go on to the segment now where we're going to talk about a bit of history about the Triton. So I've got parts here, and I've been cleaning up my room, so there's a bit of stuff. After this, we'll talk about that idea I had in the beginning of the video. So let's go look at Triton. Oh, look at that, no stickers. All the dirt sticking to the hood. There's no protection because there's no wax. That's why there's all this dirt sticking. It also hasn't been buffed or nothing, so the paint surface is like a little bit bumpy, and so it's catching all the dirt. Although this does the same thing, but that's just plastic, so it's not smooth surfaces or nothing. So, history of this Triton here. It's done in the 4 to 5 years of ownership since 2014, 2015-ish. I think it was 2015 I actually got the car. It has done 50,000 kilometers on average. That is over 10,000 kilometers per year. And that's based on the figures from when I changed the tacho to now. And that's an estimate based on the fact that the current tacho is running 2 times slower than I actually should. So the original car that tacho was in probably did twice as many kilometers as the tacho says. Or maybe less, maybe more. That's probably why it had problems. Or maybe someone tampered with it, in which case it's running a bit slow. Also, look at that. That's still nice and shiny and looks just disgusting. So the history of this Triton, 50,000 kilometers with all the problems it's had from the very get-go. It's only had, realistically, the one major thing done to it apart from the rebuild of the engine, slight half-assed rebuild of the engine. It's had the transmission rebuilt to the sense that it's now drivable and it has all the gears in this 5-speed manual. In the beginning, it had crappy tires, and so my dad took the tires that were crappy, oversized, to a second-hand tire store, swapped off those tires for some others, which were Pirellis, and they were about $60 each. And these tires had really bad inside walls, so I didn't know what they were, but I paid for them, and Dad got the tires for me for the vehicle. So I had some dangerous tires on the car from day one, which I didn't even know about because Dad got them from the second-hand tire store, in which we paid money for very dangerous tires that, because I didn't actually get a good look at them before they went on the vehicle, I didn't know they were unsafe. All I knew is Dad got some good ones. They were Pirellis, a really high-quality brand. They had damaged inside walls, and they made sure the walls were facing the inside of the car instead of the outside. If they were facing outside, I would have been able to pick up on that very easily, very quickly, and say, no, take them back. That's not what you're here to buy. And because I didn't notice, I didn't realize it, I was a fool. Or should I say, not a fool, I was inexperienced. And with this car, when I originally got it, these rubbers were not on the car. We had to go and get some, and this sides have come off once and gone missing on the road, so I lost them once on this side. And so what I've got here, I think, is a washer and a nut, or maybe just all the pins. I can get more of those clips if I have to. On the other side there is a bolt. I know that. I've had the same exhaust pipe. I have different seats, same dash but painted, different tacho because I changed it for something with more gauges, and then I modified mine so then I could accommodate the fact that I had a taco which had a different readout to a petrol. I also put different lights on there, so I have the original lights that came off of this, and they were LED. There was no reverse. There was no reversing lights. It was just indicators and stop, and they were just LEDs. So I put on those ones. They're not LEDs, they're not fancy, but it's something. I replaced the corner lamps. I replaced the grill with something I already had. I could probably get something else. And I've done my homework, and I know that I can get a bumper part for this, which is a plastic original. But I don't really want to do that because I've already got the bars and everything's okay, I guess. So yeah, I think they're cheeky kids. Oh, their kid wants to be funny. Yeah. So with this vehicle here, I've got a brand new spare on the back. Brand new tire, never really seen the day of road. Or maybe it has, I can't really remember. I think it's seen the light of day on the road with the others. But I don't have any tires similar enough that I could essentially put that in tandem with them on the road, because this one's a four-wheel drive tire, the others are all-terrain tires. So they're actually both all-terrain tires, but this one has an aggressive tread for all-terraining. With this car, it never had the tray doors. It was just a tray. Got the tray doors, put them on there, welded things up, done what I had to do, and got it going. What else can I think of? Not really much, other than the fact that I've replaced the radiator with a new one, which is plastic. It's cost effective for me. Doesn't cost nearly as much as $2 grand. And I've had oil leaks galore, but I've fixed most of them. But as soon as you fix them, you have another one like that. So that oil leak there is not good, but that's from the power steering. That's not a problem. Just get it fixed, and she'll be alright. And that's not right, driving like they are on the road. They shouldn't be driving on the wrong side of the road and stopping in someone's driveway. With this car, it is silver underneath. It's disgusting silver. It came with a brand new vinyl wrap, and it sort of makes a little bit of sense. I think I've shown the picture once that it was completely vinyl wrap, and there is signs of it, hints of it here, where it's just a plastic wrap. Would it be cheaper to put the vinyl back on? No, it'd actually be cheaper to paint the car. But they will last about as long as each other if they're in the same conditions of weather, like just left out. I mean, look at this car. That paint's lasted for years and it's not rusting. Not realistically anyway. I mean, there's surface rust here. What can I do about it? Clean it, paint it. As long as it's surface rust, it's easier to fix than, you know, full-on rust or clear off the rust. That's clear. I've cleared it. I've painted it to protect it and give it some life until I can afford to put this thing on the road. And if I want to, I can paint the whole car. And people are against the idea of making it go back to silver. No, don't go back to silver. Well, this thing, I'm just looking at the wall. This thing has a history of people wanting to buy it, steal it. And that's one of the things that's the problem. This car is just attractive to the modern day criminal. They think they're going to get away with it, but they just leave me a bill instead of getting away with it. They haven't gotten away with it once. I mean, there's the fact they've destroyed it, damaged it, tried to nick money and stuff. All they're doing is costing me by damaging it and stealing stuff. That's all they've done. But what I am going to do is make a plan on if I'm going to keep this or not, and what I'm going to do. So, since we're here, let's look at some parts from the engine. This is in the same bag, maybe. This here is the spline gear. This was cracked in a weird way. So this thing was not holding oil. There's a hairline crack on this face here where that tooth, that keyway is. Then on 90 degrees, I believe, of it was another hairline crack. And so the reason the engine was leaking oil so much is just because of those hairline cracks. This thing didn't have the tolerance to hold the oil. People gooped it up, but it still didn't stop the oil from leaking. Because this is worn out a bit, it needed to be replaced. It cost $100 just for this one part. Now, if I go in this back here, this is the gear that I've smashed with a hammer, and everyone knows about this gear. It's got a round tooth gear. It's got those splines in it. And it literally cracked. And it literally was holding on by that one armature there. And this was not good. I cracked it here, so that's my fault. It could have been potentially welded, but it's a bit of a pain. You have to use cast rods to weld this, but then it would be out of balance. However, what we could have done is made a new one out of billet and then machined it, and then it would have been just as good as the original, if not better, because it might have been lighter, it might have been heavier. Who knows? Who knows what it would have been? Now, I gotta get this back in the bag, but that was around the same time I replaced this. So it costed me a bit of time to get it on and off the road. Now, I don't know what's in this bag here. This is just bolt for a tool, for a transmission. I'm not even going to worry about those. Here we have one head gasket left. There is two of these still in the packet, but this is the last one I've got. And if I replace the head gasket here, I need to get another one or two. What I was thinking of, because of the scenarios with the 4056, I was thinking, you know, why don't I get a whole bunch of these and hold on to them, and then just be like an aftermarket sort of thing for emergencies with the 4056. I probably don't have enough business viability to make that happen, but if I bought a crap ton of these and had like a stockpile of these parts for like engine reconning, rebuilding, and it was like after hours and it's like an emergency sort of thing, that might be actually really good, because then if people can't actually go to the shops to buy parts, they at least know about how I have the stocks and stuff. So that was the actual idea that I had. The idea of having like an aftermarket for parts, specifically with cars which are hard to get parts for, or having the parts already on the shelf, that if someone needed something, like in a time where there's too many holidays, like say for example the shops are shut for a couple of weeks, you know, I don't have to ever close, and I'm not really a retailer. I just got parts on the shelf that, hey, can I buy this? And then I can just send it out or something if I'm paid. That's essentially the idea. Now, here's the parts in which we have history with. Now, I'm pretty sure there's another head gasket, but it's not here. I've replaced the head gasket a few times more than this. I have the original, I believe, and the second one from rebuilding. Or maybe not the original. Let's see what this is. Which one is this one? I'm trying to figure out which one this head gasket is. Is this the actual original, or is this a different one? I don't know how I'm going to tell, because what was the problem was the studs were welded in place, so I was hoping that I could maybe use it as a marker to tell me in the first rebuild what was wrong with the head gasket. So essentially I went from replacing the head gasket once to putting the engine together again, and then having to replace it again. So essentially replaced it once, put the engine together, then I had to replace it again, and I replaced it again. So I've done the head gasket 3 times, which means these two are the original two. From the very first replacement of the head gasket when I had problems and it wasn't really driven hard, to when I actually reconned the head professionally and it cost me $1,000, in which case I got a new one. And then I replaced the head gasket again, which is the current one in there, which means I would have 2 on the shelf, which means these are what we've got. and I have to replace the head gasket again. Now, if you think about it cost effectively, that's just too expensive to keep replacing a head gasket. But for me personally, if I can do it again and again and again easily enough, it's cheap. It's just a waste of my time to keep replacing the head gasket and not fixing the problem. That's the major reason why I took the car off the road, because I know it's going to take to fix it. I know I can put this on the road and do another 50,000 kilometers, maybe, if I don't have to drive it up any crazy hills. I could drive it maybe then pops back home, that's about it. But it requires the bottom end be rebuilt. It requires a brand new head, and even if I did all that, there's still all these other problems with the car which needs to be accounted for. Like the rear suspension needs to be redone because it's sagged to one side. The springs are both sagged. They're pretty flat, whereas the Tatars is not. The diff oil in the rear needs to be replaced, but it can't be unless the bolt's replaced for the drain plug, and might have to adjust the rear wheel bearings. Haven't done that yet. I got very thick oil in the gearbox. Front diff hasn't been serviced. It needs a new CV joint on the passenger side, but you might as well check the driver's side at the same time. Normally you do them exactly the same time, not just one or the other, but it's cheaper to do one or the other. The front suspension, ball joints and stuff, that all needs to be redone, and all the major components of the suspension and steering needs to be redone. It needs mudguards at the front for legal reasons, even though I haven't been picked on for it. I know that it needs them because it was factory on the car. The rim offset's correct and the tires are correct for this vehicle. The reason the rear needs to be rebuilt, definitely, is because of the problem I've noticed going around corners. It starts squealing, especially in the Adelaide Hills, and one side wants to drag me off the edge. So instead of just going around the corner nice and smoothly, I feel the rear and it just wants to spin to one way. So I might be turning like this, but I might be doing this on the spot instead, and I don't need that happening on a hilly drive. So this is not really safe to drive up there until the rear is done. The front is safe for now, but it does need to be done. So unsafe, safe, and expensive. So if I was to assess this from a standpoint of Regency, you need to rebuild the rear, you need to rebuild the front. Your tacho is also out because they can't accurately measure how much driving you've actually done in the vehicle. Not accurately in the sense of the odometer. The odometer matters more than the trip meter does. So because I've sort of broken rules by driving it with that, I didn't really realistically know it was working, so I couldn't tell how much it was out by. But now I do, and I know how much the speedo's out by. I need to now do something about it. To do that, I need $200 there. I need about $1,500 for the rear. I need $1,000 for the front, and for the motor, I need up to $7,000. And then if I want to paint the car, it's going to cost a couple. Oh, and the tray, I forget about the tray, but the tray needs to be rebuilt as well because the bottom side of the tray is quite damaged. I don't know what else I can really say about the car. It's not 100% defectable. There is an oil leak. Let's actually count how many defects are on this. The oil leak, the rear suspension, the front suspension, the tacho, the tray. I can't actually think of any more. Oh, the exhaust pipe. That is not right. So there's 5, 6. Oh, seatbelts. That's another one that they could get me for. They can't get me realistically for seats. There's nothing wrong with the seats. They work fine. They operate fine. They're not a problem. They've actually made it much more comfortable to drive. If they were uncomfortable, then they might pick on that. I'm just thinking if there's anything else. There is 6, 7 things I could get defected on this. Mudguards. If they know about that rule, they could get me for the mudguards. They can't pick on the rear's mudguards. They're fine. They can pick on the tray though. I'm looking at it. I'm scoping it with my eyes. I don't see any more stuff that they could really pick on about this. to say defect. The heater works, so they can't pick on the heater, and then the mister, it doesn't operate 100% properly, but it works in the sense that the sliders, the cables get a bit stuck sometimes, and so you have to play with the cables to get it all to operate. So if they were to test it, they might find it dodgy once, and if they play with it enough, they might say, oh, it actually works. But you should go and get this fixed. So there you go. I've added another potential defect that if they notice it, then that's a problem for me. The air conditioning doesn't matter so long as the heater works to demist the windows, because that's a legal requirement. I have almost 10 defects on this car. Okay, so I've got 9 defects on this car. What can I defect on something else? I need to come up with a plan to say that my car's not the only one defectable, and to actually make a point of why it's cost effective to go another way at the moment. Why I shouldn't spend money on this. Actually, I'll leave them there for now. The Tata. Okay, we'll go look at the Tata. Tata has oil leaks. Defect. It has a bad tacho. A defect. Don't think there's anything else wrong. They could pick on the number plate position and the rear tail lights, which is cheap enough to fix. I mean, you just put the blocks on the number plate and bring it out further so you can visually see it. You just replace the lens covers on the rear lights, and that gets rid of 2 very, very easy at the rear. Got 4 defects already. The question is, how are the trays mounted? They're mounted, well, it looks like securely enough. I wouldn't pick on that too much because it looks reasonable. Actually, if I look at this one here, is it actually welded to the tray? Yeah, okay, it's welded, but I have to question whether those welds are any good. I'm pretty sure if they were to look at those welds, and I'm going to point them out to you, I'm pretty sure if they look at those welds, that's a defect because they're not adequately welded. Whoever welded this tray did a crap job because those welds are terrible. But other than that, it's held up. Its tires might be defectable because they're very old, and if they can check the age, they're rubbery, so I don't think they can pick on the tires. Not really. If they're different tire treads, they could pick on that. So that's yeah, different tire treads, but that's okay. If I check this one against that one, if it's different, no, they're the same, and they're both aggressive at the rear. Yep. So legally speaking, they can't pick on the tires either. They're pretty much the same treads. They can't pick on a grill because the grill doesn't really matter. I mean, it's secured. I don't see any way that they could really defect this. This mostly works. It doesn't have many faults. It just has a bunch of problems with expenses and stuff. So it's about 5 or less defects on this car opposed to this car. Makes sense. The problem is this one needs some stuff done. I'm going to go pick on my mum's car. If they took it to Regency, they would pick on the tyres because they're already pretty low. And as you can see, there's pretty much no tread there. Well, there is tread. It's just, it's at its limit. There's like not much tread until it's level, in which case it is a defect as soon as it goes level. So that's the defect there. They want her to replace this shock here. It sort of moves, not much. It's not heavy. This side rocks. This side feels hard. Nah, both sides rock. I don't see any problems. So there's only one defect. That's tires. They could defect the tires on this, and that's about all they can do to this car right now. There is nothing else that can be defected about it, other than the windscreen wipers, in which case That's another defect I could add to the Triton because that keeps happening. I have to replace the windscreen in order to fix that problem and replace the armatures to fix it as well. This car also has that windscreen wiper defect. Heater works brilliantly. It could be defected for tyres. But as you can see, it's got the mud flap, so it can't be defected for that. But that's a legal requirement on these cars. They have to have that mud flap. Especially if you go for Regency, you need to have that on the old cars, which had them originally on them. If they did not have them originally as the factory of them, then you're okay. Mine has all the points necessary to mount them back, but they don't really line up because of the plastic covers. Yeah, they're a bit funky. What could be defected is if your tail lights are not working properly. So if that's not working, then that's your problem. Window wipers. So oil leaks, window wipers, tires. It was once upon a time number plates, but they've been fixed. The exhaust, the seat belt, 5 defects. Suspension, so go to 6 because of the ball joints at the front are a bit clunky. It needs to be fixed. And that's about it. I mean, that's got 6. That's got about 5. And this one here, there isn't nothing wrong with the ball joint suspension. It was a shocker. It was the rear brakes that could have been defective if this went to Regency. It had a major oil leak, which is pretty much fixed. Window wipers worked fine. The heater, air conditioner worked fine. I can't think of anything else that could have been defected on this because there isn't really any defects on this. There was just a shocker, oil leak, and I've forgotten what the third one was. Dang. I don't remember what the third one was. I have to watch the video over again to understand. They could maybe defect this mirror here for the hole in the top corner. Maybe. But it's mostly there except for that corner. So, let me just try this one more time. Shocker. Brakes. I think there is a seatbelt issue. Slight, it's not that bad, but it was barely noticeable. Shocker, brakes, oil leak. That's right. That's why we got 3 defects on this car. That's it. So think about it. This one's the best out of the old cars. In the new cars, there's only 1 defect. So this one is super close. This actually does still have tread on its tires. This has brand new tires at the front and old tires at the rear that need to be replaced. This one needs to be replaced because it's the spare. It's bad. This is an old tire, but look how much tread's still left. It's plenty. It's more than Mum's car is. So, technically speaking, the spare needs to be replaced, but it exists in the first place, so it's okay in the sense that it's actually there. But this is not legal because of that marker there. It's flush. Replacing all the tires. It needs to be done. Anyway, guys, I think that's it for this video. We understand what's going on now with these cars and these defects and whatnot. We understand now that the Triton is really out of league at the moment to get going again. Unless I can get some really super cheap parts. I think if people really want to see that car on the road again because they love the Triton and they want to see work get done on it, I think what I need to do is start working on maybe doing some merchandising with the car, like parts for the car, merchandising for like shirts and stuff, and maybe do that sort of stuff, and maybe have like a shop in which people who are looking for the Triton parts, they can order and get stuff, and then I can sort of have a shelf of items. And I try to keep it as stocked as possible and like have these restrictions on how low I can get on stock before I have a problem. And that's why I got some money, at least for now. It's because as soon as it's gone, there is no more money in the house to keep going. So it's one of those things. I'll replace this antenna, but it's expensive. It's like $80 for an antenna. That's my dad.